The Empire reaches Earth. For over 10,000 years, the Zarket Empire had ruled the stars with cold efficiency. Their fleets blotted out skies. Their psionic overlords subjugated minds with barely a whisper. Resistance wasn't crushed. It was erased, as if it had never existed. Worlds didn't fall. They were absorbed, their histories rewritten under the watchful eyes of the psychic archivists. And now they had found Earth. It was a backwater world at the edge of Spiral Arm, untouched, unimportant, and underdefended. Perfect for annexation. High Executor Zeltor, commanding the Empire's 7th expansionary fleet, saw no need for diplomacy. Humanity would kneel like all the others. On the edge of Earth's orbit, his fleet shimmered into visibility, black monoliths casting shadows across satellites and space stations. One message was transmitted to every frequency on Earth. You belong to the Zarket. Surrender, and your species will endure. Resist, and you will be unmade. It was received with silence, then confusion, and then a firestorm of responses. Earth's population didn't react like the Executor expected. Governments were skeptical. Citizens thought it was a prank or a viral marketing stunt. But when a beam of white-hot plasma carved a trench a kilometer deep in the Sahara as a demonstration, the illusion shattered. Panic spread, but so did something else: adaptation. Within hours, global defense systems were coordinating despite language, politics, and rivalries. NATO, China, Russia, India, each contributed what they had. Hackers attacked orbital signals. Satellite operators worked double shifts. Engineers and bunkers tore into every scrap of wreckage they could recover from the first brief skirmishes. When the Zarket launched their first wave of drones to cripple infrastructure, something happened that hadn't occurred in 1,000 Imperial campaigns. They were jammed. Not destroyed, blinded. Earth's defense grid, retrofitted with AI and strange frequency-emitting devices, began short-circuiting Zarket drones mid-air. Coordinated electronic warfare had never been seen at such intensity from a pre-FDL world. And worse, for the Zarket, their psionic surveillance couldn't penetrate human minds clearly. Human thought patterns were chaotic, emotionally volatile, fluctuating wildly. Psychic operatives reported headaches, nausea, even hallucinations. Their minds are fire, one psionic lieutenant whispered before losing consciousness. They burn when we touch them. Executor Zeltor watched as 3 scout cruisers vanished over the Pacific, brought down by crude missiles and electronic interference. He hissed through sharpened teeth, scales tightening with tension. This was not going to be as simple as he'd thought. Earth had no empire, no unified banner, no star fleet, and yet, every attempt to dominate them was met with resistance, both digital and physical, laced with unpredictability. He issued a new order: full invasion. Back on Earth, world leaders met under the emergency network codename Unity. As Earth's first orbital battle loomed, one voice crackled across the coalition comms. They want our surrender. I say we give them hell. Humanity strikes where it hurts. The first full-scale assault on Earth began at dawn over the Pacific. Zarket dropships screamed through the atmosphere like burning spears. Plasma batteries lit the sky. Cities blacked out. Communication grids stuttered. But the humans weren't panicking anymore. They were fighting back. In Manila, hacked Zarket drones were turned against their own troops. In Berlin, swarms of modified quadcopters overloaded enemy scanners with noise and infrared flares. Across rural Texas, resistance cells set up jamming towers disguised as grain silos, scrambling psionic frequencies into chaotic loops. None of these tactics were standard. None of them were elegant. But they worked. Zarket ground troops, 8-foot-tall exoskeletal warforms with built-in psi amplifiers, found themselves stumbling, blind to enemy movements. Their psychic battle coordination faltered. Their once precise formations became fragmented, sluggish. Human fighters weren't organized by strict hierarchy or hive-like unity. They moved like swarms, independent, unpredictable, and terrifyingly creative. And that terrified the Empire more than anything. 3 weeks into the war, a captured Zarket corvette was hauled into an underground hangar in Iceland. Leading the operation was a joint team of engineers, soldiers, and one theoretical physicist who specialized in crazy ideas. Her name was Dr. Mara Chun. While generals debated tactics, Mara saw something else. The Zarket's strength wasn't just in their ships or psionics. It was in their homogeneity. Their entire empire ran on mental synchronicity, a galactic-scale hive consciousness with strict emotional control. Fear, doubt, joy, anger, those were suppressed, filtered, and discarded. And that made them vulnerable to one thing: human chaos. She had a plan. Using hacked psychic interfaces, Mara's team uploaded an engineered cognitive virus, coded with raw human emotional data, stories, music, irrational memes, and cultural paradoxes, into the ship's core. It wasn't malware in the traditional sense. It was a psychological weapon, a mental wildfire. 2 days later, the Corvette was relaunched. Not toward Earth, but toward a mid-tier Zarket colony called Solon VA. The ship broadcast on all psychic channels the moment it exited hyperspace. Within an hour, the colony's psionic grid began to fragment. Citizens collapsed under emotional overload. Authority broke down. Soldiers started screaming from hallucinations. Statues of the Empress were defaced, some even hugged. By the end of the day, Solon VA fell without a single shot fired. And across the Empire, others noticed. Oppressed species that had been subjugated for generations saw a crack in the facade. Rebellions sparked like brush fires. Riots erupted on frontier worlds. The mighty Zarket, once untouchable, were now unraveling. Back on Earth, Dr. Chin stood before the Unity Council with a grim smile. They thought order was strength, she said, but they built their empire on psychic glass. She looked at the globe, rotating behind her. Cities burned, oceans smoldered, but across continents, human resistance still stood. Let's keep throwing rocks. The psychological war. The Zarket had always ruled through certainty. Every world they conquered was folded into a unified mind state, a calm, calculated network of thought. Emotion was a liability. Individuality was chaos. And now, that chaos was spreading. The Solon VA collapse had been the first breach. It wasn't just military, it was ideological. The cognitive virus Earth released didn't just scramble systems. It seeded questions. What is joy? What is freedom? What is I? The Zarket weren't prepared for these thoughts. Not because they were complicated, but because they had never had to consider them. On Earth, a new offensive was launched. Not with ships, but with culture. Under Operation Heartbeat, teams of scientists, artists, and AI linguists crafted emotional payloads. Bursts of music, visual art, human voices reading poetry, memories encoded in digital dreams. These were converted into psionic waveform broadcasts using stolen Zarket tech. Across occupied systems, the transmissions slipped in through the cracks, through psychic relay points, maintenance drones, and rebel proxies. Some broadcasts triggered mass insomnia in Zarket colonies. Others caused soldiers to drop their weapons and weep uncontrollably. One particular file, a child's laugh blended with a lullaby, brought down an entire military outpost on Vega Trail. At first, the High Synapse Council thought it was sabotage. Then it realized the truth. The infection wasn't external. It came from within. The Zarket had no immune system for the human mind. As the psychological contagion grew, entire units of elite psionic enforcers began defecting or collapsing. Some killed themselves rather than endure the storm of conflicting thoughts. Others, like Admiral Valshar, listened, questioned, and changed. She had commanded dozens of planetary conquests. Her mind was once pure order. Now it burned with emotion. The first thing she did was destroy her own flagship's psychic beacon. The second? Contact Earth. Her message, broadcast in over 50 languages, echoed across the stars. You are not what we expected. You are not what we feared. But you are what we needed. I was a weapon. Now I choose to think. Earth was stunned. So was the Empire. The defection of Valshar shattered the illusion of unity. She wasn't just a commander. She was a symbol. One of the architects of the Empire now believed in humanity's message. The fracture deepened, but the Empire was far from defeated. Cornered and unraveling, the High Synapse Council activated Protocol Endlight, a failsafe buried in the core of their command systems. It wasn't a counterattack. It was eradication. In 30 standard cycles, a stellar ignition weapon would collapse the Helios 9-star, projecting a wave that would obliterate Earth's solar system. No demands, no warnings, just silence. When Earth intercepted the signal, panic rippled across Unity's command center. But Dr. Mara Chun didn't panic. She leaned forward, eyes focused, voice calm. We made them feel. Now we make them bleed. She stood, turning to the council. Give me a fleet. We're going to break their weapon and take their empire down with it. Collapse and rebirth. The weapon drifted in the cold silence near Helios 9, a dead star built into a trap. The Zarket Inlight device, powered by collapsing singularity and amplified by psychic harmonics, was a final act of empire-wide nihilism. If they could not control the galaxy, they would burn it. Earth was its first target. The countdown, 72 hours. The United Terran Resistance moved fast. Admiral Valshar, now commanding the hastily formed Earth-allied fleet, led a strike force composed of captured Zarket ships, retrofitted Earth carriers, and vessels piloted by newly liberated species. It was chaos incarnate, barely coordinated, underpowered, outgunned. And yet, for the first time in history, free minds sailed into battle side by side. As the fleet approached the Helios system, the star pulsed unnaturally. The weapon had begun its ignition cycle. Time was slipping away. Dr. Mara Chun stood aboard the human flagship Odyssey, surrounded by a makeshift neural interface built from broken Zarket tech, duct tape, and sheer insanity. This weapon isn't just physical, she said, fingers dancing across the interface. It's psychically anchored. We have to sever it on both fronts. Valshar nodded grimly. Then we cut its mind, and then its heart. The fleet charged. Zarket loyalist forces still surrounded the weapon, fanatics who'd chosen annihilation over freedom. The battle erupted in burning silence, plasma and kinetic rounds colliding in the vacuum like fireworks for a funeral. Humanity didn't fight clean. They used unpredictable vectors, microwarp jumps, even music-based frequency hacking. One Earth ship blasted Beethoven's Ode to Joy on psychic channels, disorienting enemy crews long enough for allied ships to punch through. Mara plugged into the psychic interface. Her mind flooded with echoes, grief, fear, order, chaos. She reached into the weapon's command core, mentally dueling the last of the High Synapse. Now a fractured AI ghost, still clinging to control. You are disorder. You are corruption. It whispered. You must be erased. Mara smiled through the mental pain. No, I'm human. She overloaded the core with a single thought. Hope. The psychic link shattered. The star pulsed one final time and stabilized. At the same moment, Valshar's strike group pierced the hull and detonated the fusion core. The weapon's physical infrastructure folded inward and collapsed into inert debris. The Endlight failed, and with it, so did the last shadow of Zarket power. Across the galaxy, silence fell, and then was broken by cheering. The Zarket Empire, fractured beyond repair, officially collapsed. Planet by planet, species declared independence. Statues fell. Minds opened. For the first time in millennia, the stars belonged to everyone. Months later, a new coalition was signed into existence. The Free Galactic Accord. It had no empress, no synapse council, only a principle. No mind shall be bound. No voice shall be silenced. At its center sat Earth, not as a conqueror, but as a symbol. The species that had broken the oldest empire in the galaxy, not with superior firepower, but with the unshakable will to be free.